My major focus with this project, called the Mulloon Community Landscape Rehydration Project, is to make the project happen, is to restore the landscape function of this catchment. And to do so, I'm working with all of the landholders in the catchment to achieve that outcome. I think people's imaginations ran wild a bit. Everyone else wanted to get involved, and it's just grown from a lower Mulloon project to a whole of catchment project virtually over time. Yeah, which makes it a bigger challenge. Timeframes are a lot longer as a result, but I think we're going to get a much better outcome. The key thing is that there's a shared vision. Every landholder involved really wants to do the right thing by their catchment. I think they can see the benefits for themselves, their own places, their own part of the creek, and also for the catchment as a whole. And so that becomes the binding glue. And any issues that any landholder may have between each other becomes secondary to that greater goal. I think it is a unique project because of the scale, because it's dealing at a catchment scale. You have contiguous group of landholders along virtually a 50-kilometre stretch of creek that are all committed to improving the creek itself and improving the environment around the creek and right up into all of the tributaries as well. So though the goal of total catchment management has existed for a long time, I think, in the lexicon of us people involved in environmental management, actually achieving that has been a much bigger challenge. And I think it's because of the shared vision that we've been able to achieve with this project. Yeah, Sydney Water have supported this project. They've been on board really since the pilot project was first commenced. In fact, all of the New South Wales government agencies have really been quite supportive of this project, so we've been pretty fortunate there. You've got local land services, you've got Department of Environment and Heritage, New South Wales Agriculture, and Sydney Water, and a number of others. This pond behind us is called Peter's Pond, named after Peter Andrews, and it was the first structure that was built back in 2006 as part of the pilot project. We're down at the bottom end of the floodplain on the home farm, around what we call a neck point or a choke point or a constriction. It's effectively the plug in the bathtub down here, behind which all of the sediments of the floodplain, all of the nutrients, all of the water is held up behind. And what happened upon European settlement and the grazing pressure that was put on these floodplains was the plug down here in the choke point was pulled out of the bathtub, and that started all of the erosion in the system, all the soil, all the water, all the nutrients, and all the biodiversity effectively went down the drain. And so that's probably the most important structure and pond in this whole system is here at Peter's Pond, because that's named after Peter Andrews, because that's the plug that's been put back in the bathtub, which is now holding all of that material that I discussed up in the system. This is one of about 20 structures along 3 kilometres of creek here, and so the creek system has been stepped back up. Behind us, prior to this work happening in 2006, it was an erosion gully, and it was an eroding gully. But that's not the way these systems were 200 years ago. They were called discontinuous systems by the geomorphologists. It was a chain of pond system. It didn't have a continuous channel running down through the floodplain. And so it was a chain of ponds, and those ponds were all bank full right up to the top of the bank here. And they would have been the windows on the groundwater, these ponds, and that would have been the surface expression of the groundwater right across the floodplain. So 100 hectare floodplain this particular one is. That would have been gigalitres worth of water being stored underneath the floodplain and trickling out over time. This project, right from the beginning, the commitment was to comprehensively benchmark the project before we did any on-ground works, and so we've set up a series of 5 stream gauges down through the system. We've got probably 50 or 60 piezometers in about half a dozen or more transects across the floodplains along Mulloon Creek. We've done biodiversity monitoring, fish, invertebrates, frogs, birds, vegetation, landscape function. So as much benchmarking as we possibly can to understand the condition of the catchment today, and so as we can monitor change over time. And also that provides confidence to landholders, for example, that water isn't being taken from the system. It is in fact rehydrating the system.